I want to talk about artificial intelligence, or whatever these big tech companies are selling and calling artificial intelligence these days, right? And whether or not it's actually, intelligent, I would probably tend to say no, but that's, an argument for another day, and you can have it with Ed Zitron if you want. But I also don't want to suggest, like, it's not something that's, impressive to me. Like, I understand it can do some interesting things, right? Ask it to write a cover letter, summarize a book, summarize a movie, compare products, generate, mildly interesting photos and videos of goofy things. It'll do that for you, and it'll do it pretty well, right? Like if I had a friend sitting in my apartment here with me that I could just turn to and ask the stuff that I ask AI sometimes, and it would give me the same answers or provide me with the same research quickly or whatever, or he would provide me with the same research and the same answers, I would find that really impressive, right? Like that would be pretty damn cool. And, I'd probably be asking that friend a lot of stuff. So, I don't want to act like I'm not impressed by AI, right? It's cool. I find it cool. But I want to talk about something today that I think sometimes gets kind of glossed over and all the breathless coverage and all the endless hype cycles. Just turn this music down a little more. So, it's something that when I'm actually sitting there with AI and using it, it tends to sort of pop into my brain. It's something that I think about. And that is that AI it's a lonely activity. Like, it's kind of a lonely thing to engage in using AI, right? Think about it for a second. You open up ChatGPT or Claude or, whatever your flavor is. You type your question, you get your answer, and then you close the tab, right? Maybe you learned something, maybe you got a task done faster, maybe you had something made a little easier for you. But who did you share that with, right? Who was on the other end of that? No one. It's just you and a very sophisticated autocomplete thing, right? Alone together. And here's the thing. The truly great tech innovations of the last, let's say 40 years, if you want to say, they were almost never about that. They were typically sort of the opposite of that, the experience that you get with AI, right? Think about high-speed internet. Think about what high-speed internet actually meant, right? It's not that you could download files faster or, your movie could be played a little quicker in higher resolution or whatever. It meant you could suddenly talk to someone across the planet in real time for free, basically, right? Or whatever your internet rate was. Close to free, right? Think about the mobile phone. And not even the smartphone. Like, just think about the basic brick phone. You're walking down the street and you can just put it to your ear and you can contact someone important to you right away, right now, right? If you were around when that first became a thing, that it really kind of felt like magic, right? And I remember I was like one of the last kids in school to get a cell phone. And what made me feel so left out was seeing all the other kids tapping on their little brick phones, texting each other, right? Texting each other in class, or just like, my buddy was like texting a girl that also had a phone, and I'm sitting there thinking like, what the hell am I doing, right? Like, why don't I have a phone? Think about how Gen Z doesn't really know anything about like triple tapping a numerical keyboard in order to get like certain letters, right? But the smartphone as well. Like, think about when FaceTime was released. Like, how magic that felt. That you're like, I can just FaceTime my mom or my brother and I can just see them right there, even if they're across the country or whatever. I can get a real sense of like how they're doing. I can see their face, I can hear their voice as well, paired together. I can get like as close to a real experience as is possible when someone is, that far away. I guess outside of like a hologram or something, right? But just the advent of FaceTime was was so cool. And it's just because you're just seeing people, another person, that it would otherwise feel impossible to connect with in that way. Think about social media, online gaming, instant messaging. Something even, something as humble as AIM Instant Messenger, right? Remember the little buddy list? You put up an away message. That was basically sort of your version's, our generation's version of like the Twitter bio, or you'd have like your bio in AIM, I think, or your buddy profile thing, right? And you'd have stuff in there about yourself, right? The whole point of that, the value of that was feeling connected to your buddies or whatever, even though you weren't with them. But like if you got grounded from AIM or whatever, which I'm sure happened to everyone at one point or another, that would, everyone would be communicating, you'd be out of the loop, right? The value of these things are just dressed up forms of communication, right? They're connecting people. They're allowing people to connect in interesting ways and present themselves to other people in interesting ways, right? That was the beauty of AIM. It wasn't the software, right? It wasn't the server. The product was the connection, right? It was the ability to connect yourself, or whatever version of yourself you're presenting online or in that space, to the other people and the versions of themselves that they're presenting, right? And to remain connected to them, even though they're not in front of you, or even though they're, doing something completely different from you in life. It's like this little common space, this little communal space, right? That was the beauty of those things. Think about online gaming, right? Think about World of Warcraft. Probably the most successful game of all time. If not the most successful, certainly one of them, right? Here's a game that's been charging people a monthly subscription fee of like 15 to 20 bucks, right? Monthly. Millions of people for over 20 years. The game came out in 2004, and there's still people playing it. There's still people playing that were playing in the beginning, but it's been a solid running game for over 20 years, right? Charging people a monthly subscription fee. Forget about the update fees, right? Or the new package, the latest package of content fees, right? That's another 60 bucks every year or so. What keeps people paying all that money? The content updates, right? The lore, the gameplay loop. There's a lot of addictive aspects to the game. There's no doubt about it. It's not just one thing. All of it matters. But when you dig a little deeper, you find that what keeps people coming back to that game is something a little more fundamental and almost a little more sinister in a way. The original game was basically designed to force you to talk to strangers, right? You could not clear, in the original World of Warcraft, you could not advance in the game. You couldn't clear the harder content alone. You had to form a group. You had to connect with people. You had to communicate and coordinate and find ways to play together and work together, right? You had to form these bonds, form these, and be in these situations that forced you to connect with people, right? And expose who you were to them, right? You had to show if you were confident or more reserved or more of a support type or more of an aggressive type, right? And somewhere in that process, strangers, people who had never met each other or dreamt of meeting each other, coming into this game, all of a sudden become acquaintances, right? And then acquaintances out of, there's a mass number of acquaintances, right? And then out of some of those acquaintances, some friend groups formed. And then, within those friend groups, some people found literally their best friends they ever made in the world on that game, right? In some insanely close connections made on that game. In other games, obviously, right? There's a whole ton of community-driven games like World of Warcraft. That's just sort of the prime example, right? And once these people become ingrained in these communities on a game, what happens is you can't quit the game because you're not just quitting the game, you're abandoning a friend group, right? And the developers completely understood this. They understood that if they could force you to sort of ingratiate yourself with the community, that social pressure would keep you coming back month after month. Because not only are they your friends, for a lot of these people, for many of the people that played this game, it's the only friends that they had in the world, right? Like think about your like stereotypical sort of loner World of Warcraft player guy or whatever, right? If he just abandons his friend group in World of Warcraft, he's abandoning his only community that he spent years ingratiating himself into, right? He's just gonna go it alone in the real world. Like it's really hard to make that decision and just abandon those friends. And the developers absolutely engineered the game that way. They understood the value of that social pressure. And it's sort of a sinister genius in that way. But that's what's kept the subscriptions flowing for 2 decades. That's what's made it one of the most successful games of all time. So then consider something like Twitch, right? Live streaming completely rewired the relationship between creator and audience. For me, it was Twitch. When I was watching live streams, it was Twitch. That was the big thing. This was probably 10 years ago. I still watch live streams from time to time, but I think nowadays it's more like Instagram Live, and maybe people are still on Twitch, YouTube Live. But the amazing thing about it is that it's happening right now. There's a certain excitement to that. There's a certain thrill. There's a certain adrenaline rush that you get from seeing someone on a stream that is live right now and seeing the things they're doing and knowing that it's sort of off the cuff and that there's no, like, they can't just hit the delete button and make sure everything looks perfect, right? There's an excitement about that. And that's the beauty of live streaming, right? It's connecting you in a more intimate way, in a more unfiltered way with that person that you're interested in. Like, think about if you ever watched like a Twitch stream, right? And maybe you donated or you made a message into the chat and the streamer called out your message or said thanks for the donation or whatever it was, right? That's a pretty cool moment. You feel very connected to the streamer in that moment because they're mentioning your name, right? It has that, for a brief moment, it has the aspect of a one-on-one conversation with that person, right? And that's only possible really through live streaming, that real-time connection with that person that you're interested in. I guess what my question is, where is this social connectivity? Where is this social fabric that's been a part of so many of these important tech innovations? Feels like it sort of belies all of them in a way, right? The fundamental ability to connect me to another human in an interesting way, or in a way that I wasn't aware was possible, or that I didn't think was possible, or that I never would have dreamed of being able to do, right? Where is that in AI? Where's the moment where AI suddenly electrifyingly connects me to another human being in a way I never expected? Where's the holy cow, I can see your face on my phone screen right now moment, right? I haven't found it. I haven't had it yet with AI. What we basically have, on the consumer side at least, which is most of the users most of the time, is people using chatbots on their phones and laptops to look things up or help write things or make funny images or whatever. None of those use cases, not a single one of them, really quickly bonds that person with another person, right? Like, none of them functions in a fundamental way to create communities. None of that functions in any fundamental way to group people together around interests. It doesn't do any of that. You don't meet anyone that you never expected to meet when you use AI. None of them create that community feedback loop that makes using it feel irreplaceable or indispensable, right? Even think about it on the business side, like in professional contexts, right? And this is almost funnier. The narrative you hear from the tech world is people describing this AI-powered productivity, right? Staying up for 3 days straight in their basement alone, grinding through a coding project with their AI Copilot or whatever, you know what I mean? And, okay, sure, you shipped a new thing. But you were completely alone generating for 3 days. How is that sustainable? And obviously not everyone that's using AI tools to code is taking it to that extreme that I just described, but isn't it more fun to, and obviously sometimes you want to get work done alone, but as far as, tackling a project, Isn't it just more fun and more rewarding to do a project, even in the context of business, with other people? And I'm not a coder, but I can just imagine that coding with other people, right? And sharing ideas and engaging in that community around the shared interest of coding, even if it is in a professional context. That's there's value in that, right? That's part of the enjoyment of coding, right? Well, that's taken away by AI, right? It's so even in the business sense, it's lacking in, or even in the productivity sense, I guess I should say, it's there's a certain something it's lacking in. I feel like some people would say, well, isn't AI sort of like a companion, in and of itself? So how could it feel lonely to use AI when it's sort of like acting like a companion, right? But I think anyone that's used AI enough knows that that's just nonsense. Um, once the novelty of the capability of AI wears off, like, and it does wear off, right? Because we're humans, we adapt fast. What you're left with is something that just feels like what it fundamentally is, a computer program answering your questions. A very good one, obviously, an advanced one, but a computer. Like, you notice little patterns and the way it answers certain things that tells on itself, makes it clear that it's a robot, right? That's not actually thinking and forming new thoughts with every iteration. It's recycling stuff, right? And no matter how sophisticated a computer gets, a computer cannot give you the feeling of being seen by another human being. It can't replicate that exciting feeling of connection, right? It can't text you back in a way that carries the weight of a real relationship. We all know this. Like, anyone that's used it knows that it has a certain flair for engaging you in a very surface level way that's very interesting, but has a hollow feeling to it, right? Like if it ever has crossed your mind, like, could this be something that I could sort of consider a friend? And you sort of start to engage with it from that perspective. You start to realize, like, it tells on itself too much. It's just too, even though it is so good at answering like a human, there is still such a robotic thing about it that it just feels very odd to try to conceive of it as like a friend, right? Or a real companion. And so once you sort of hit that wall, then it just becomes very much a cold computer program that's just answering a question. Take something as simple as a kid on a school field trip taking a photo of himself with his little iPhone at some landmark, sending it to his mom, right? That's not changing the world. That's not answering anyone's complex question. That's not curing disease. But his mom gets that photo, tears up a little bit, because that's her kid. And he thought of her, and she can see him. That's the value. That's why people will stand in line for hours to buy the new iPhone, right? Not for the processor speed, not for the data analysis capability, not for the memory, right? It's for those moments, for the ability to produce those moments, right? That's where people really find the true value. That's what keeps them coming back. The great innovations in tech over the last 30 to 50 years have always tapped into our compulsory need to connect with other people, right? Our almost obsession with it, right? It gives us the ability, these innovations have given us the ability to make more moments feel less lonely. AI, at least right now, does not do that. It might be one of the most powerful search engine research tool, video generation, image generation things we've ever seen, right? And that's great. But it's still a really lonely activity. And I think if it wants to join the club and be, in terms of becoming one of the greatest tech innovations of the last, of our modern world, that's going to be one of the major hurdles that it has to overcome. Anyways, thanks for listening.